we have to be honest, and the ADT system is the first system to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, but there's only one ADT, and so it would be nice to see the PFL grow, for the teams to have academies, for us to be able to put an academy league together, for that to start happening, and we look at the national team now. There's Dato, Aguinaldo, and Bedic are the current three really that are homegrown.
Welcome to Across the Line. Today is a big one, as we've got the Azkals coach on the show today, Scott Cooper, on the program, talking everything about the Philippine National Team, what's in store, what to look forward to, and there's a lot. So, Chris, what an episode to get an opportunity to have Scott down here for the first time, which is kind of a travesty, actually, that it's just his first time on Across the Line.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit in the interview, the fact that he doesn't like to be in front of the camera or the microphone too often, but I think it was a great opportunity for the football public to get some insight into how he works, how he operates, how he thinks. Working alongside him, he has a really single-minded focus. He's all about winning. The Last Dance is something that everyone's on about at the moment with Michael Jordan and that winning mindset. Scott's just really diligent and meticulous in his preparation. He's got very clear ideas on how the game should be played, how the team should operate. So I think it's a really nice opportunity for the Philippine football fans to get some of that insight, directly from Scott himself.
Yeah, 100%. And talking about what it takes to make it into the team now. There's a lot of talent that is at the disposal of Scott and of the Philippine national team and the federation, but it takes a particular set of skills and a particular mindset and character to be able to make it into the squad. So he talks all about it on this show, and we hope that you guys listen to it and enjoy it. And if you do, please do subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to check us out on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. And that is it. We're going to get out of the way, and we're going to hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. Here it is. Scott Cooper of the Philippine National Team. Welcome to Across the Line. We've got Azkals coach Scott Cooper with us today, and it's a lovely opportunity for us to catch up with the coach of the Philippine National Team and to see how things are going, perhaps dive in a little bit into his past and the past experiences that he's enjoyed at the helm with the Azkals, and what to look forward to as well. How's it going, Scott?
Good, thank you. Good to be on, and I've been watching your show and admired some of the episodes, well, all of them that I've seen. So, yeah, it's good to be on and catch up with some familiar faces.
Chris, how's it going?
Yeah, very good, Jing. It was a long time coming, really, getting Scott on the show. He was never like a huge fan of interviews. That was one of the things when we first met. He's like, I'm not a huge fan of interviews, but he messaged me about a week or two ago and said, I've been listening to some of the episodes, and he said he'd been enjoying them. So I extended the invitation, and he was happy to oblige. So really, really great to get him on the show. And hopefully we can go into a little bit about his current situation with the Azkals. I'm sure people are quite interested to find out what's been going on.
I was quite fortunate enough to be able to speak to Scott when he first arrived. So that was 2 years ago, I believe it was. And there's been a lot of excitement with how things have transpired over the last 2 years. But I'm quite interested in right now. What kind of work, if any, are you getting done with the current pandemic that's upon us? Is there any work that you're capable of doing at the moment? If so, what are you working on?
Yeah, there's always work you can do, isn't it? Especially as a national team coach, because you do have a lot of downtime when players are at the club. So there's some natural work and planning you can do. I guess this pandemic stopped a little bit of a momentum that we were starting to gather. I'd finally had the team in my own hands for 5 or 6 games, which I'd not had before, and we were starting to build on that. And the pandemic came in, and we just had to stay positive. So what we've been doing is, looking at developing the system, looking at other players that might qualify, that have got a desire to play, looking at younger players, and just looking at the overall plan and where we are in the group standings, and just kind of creating objectives and keeping busy that way in communication with players and staff and things.
Man, it's been quite a road since things started. I believe I met you at that hotel at the launching of the new coaching staff, and at the time, Terry Butcher was still involved in the picture. And now, things have transpired where you've now had an opportunity to settle into the Philippines and to really get to know the squad that you have at your disposal, and perhaps looking ahead as well to how you want to shape things. Can you take us back to that beginning? To that first few experiences that you had in the country?
Sure. When I first came in under of course, Thomas Dooley. Terry Butcher followed Thomas Dooley, and I came in there to help and assist with Terry, and unfortunately that never took place. And then it left Chris and I and the staff to go ahead and navigate the Bahrain game, which I was pleased with in the first game, and then later on again the Oman game, and between that and now, obviously Sven Goran Eriksson came in, and so I've been lucky in a sense because my licenses had not continued the CPD, so they weren't relevant anymore, and so I wasn't in a position, and so it gave me a year or so to have a look at the squad, have a look at the players, get to know the culture a little bit. I knew a little bit about it, obviously, before I came in, so I would never have taken the job blind. And it gave me that chance to have a look at things. So I've been fortunate in that sense that I had a little bit of time where Terry came in and then Sven came in, and to get to know everything and build from there. So, I had a break between the Bahrain and the Oman game, and then another break, and then back in for the last 6 games that we've had. So I've been lucky in that sense. So for me, it's given me the time to get to know players, get to know the system and people, and look at its strengths and its weaknesses.
Was it different in terms of what you expected with regards to the quality of the players? Was it different to what you'd experienced, for example, in your previous role in Thailand, or were you quite pleasantly surprised with the level of players that you had at your disposal?
Well, it was different, but I don't think I wasn't surprised because I'd seen the Philippines play a couple of times in Thailand and watched. Obviously, I'd got players that played for the Thai national team. I developed a few players into the Thai national team and some at that time current players. So I'd got a chance to watch their games, and I'd always looked at different teams around because you're always looking as a club coach for that +1 Asian slot as well. So I always made it my business to take a look around, and it always struck me that they got the European feel to the team, and so I was a bit intrigued by that. And so when I came in, it was clear straight away that I felt more suited here. One thing for sure was I didn't need a translator. I felt a little bit more in custom with the likes of you, the young husbands, and people like that were already here that I could relate to a little bit. It was easier to get a feel for it, culturally and from an environment perspective. So it was a nice surprise coming in, and it was. I wasn't surprised about the players because I'd already done my homework, and I would have done that before any job in any case. So I always felt like the team had got potential, and of course at that time they just qualified for the Asian Cup, and so I knew that it was a strong team.
I remember we did the first training session in Bahrain, and I remember we went back to the hotel, and one of the things that you said that struck you instantly was the fact that a lot of the ideas and things that you were looking to implement were quite quickly embedded within the first session. I remember you turned to me at dinner and you're like, wow, I was quite surprised that they're normally things that would take maybe a few weeks, a few months, if you're in somewhere like a Thailand where it might not be your first language and it has to go through an interpreter. It sometimes does get literally lost in translation, doesn't it? Some of the information that you're trying to embed. But obviously from that first initial training session, it was quite easy for you to get your point across. Is that why you feel it's been quite a quick transition for you in terms of getting your ideas across? Because it's seemingly a lot of the players were able to pick up on your ethos quite quickly and were able to implement your game plan in quite a short period of time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember that conversation we had too, Chris, and it felt like lightning speed the way they adapted and understood what we were trying to do. I say we because it was a group of us, you and I involved, and at that point, you can look at the translation as a big hindrance where you've come from, but also the football education. Many of these players, like yourself, had come through junior systems, had better youth football education. And so I would say that, along with being able to speak directly. And one thing in Thailand I learned quickly is you better make sure your translator is on the same wavelength as you in terms of not just the language, but the emotion and the interjections you put into your like speaking and where you're coming from. So that's always a concern, but it wasn't when I was here. So I should have been as surprised as I was, because A, the players had better youth education, and B, the language wasn't a barrier anymore. And more than that, there's quite a few British influence around the camp, so it was easy to kind of get a cultural feel quickly. So and that resulted in a good 7th minute, something like that. For obviously they were there, but Bahrain and Oman were two games that we played away from home, and we didn't win, but we didn't get beaten either. And so I think there's a lot to be said about that early understanding of where we're going.
Yeah.
Of course, moving on to the next two big tournaments that you had shortly after coming on, a lot of people were looking forward to another Suzuki Cup, and of course the first ever Asian Cup that the Philippines would get involved in. And then there was a little bit of a plot twist that took everybody by surprise. Obviously, Sven Goran Eriksson being announced. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience? Obviously, Sven in the game, a legendary coach. What was it like? First of all, what was the experience like first finding out about Sven taking charge? And then what was it like working alongside him for those tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. And of course, his CV and credentials speak for themselves. So it's all right there in black and white. I'd worked under him when I was at Leicester City, not with the first team. I was an academy coach, but I remember now having to watch my youth team play, and I'd spent time speaking to him. So I'd known him for a little while. And when he came in, it was there was a lot of enthusiasm going into the Asian Cup. We'd got a strong coach on paper, and so the optimism was high. But it just didn't kind of work out that way. And sometimes in football, it doesn't matter who you are. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And unfortunately, that's the way it went. We didn't win any game, didn't get a point in the Asian Cup, and probably didn't equip ourselves apart from the first 80 minutes against South Korea as well as we could have done.
What about that Suzuki Cup? Obviously, we went up against a Vietnamese team as well. That was, when you look at them, it was quite impressive what they were able to accomplish, not just in terms of the trophies that they won in the region at that time, both in the club game and on the national stage, but it's also seemingly the manner of play that they brought that was quite a pleasure to watch as well. What did you think of that Vietnamese team and that experience of the Suzuki Cup?
I think you've hit the nail on the head when you said they brought something, because when they came to Bacolod, they brought aggression, desire, and a real determination that if you don't match in the first 15, 20 minutes of a game, you're not going to come off on top. And I was frustrated, probably most in any game I've been with the Azkals, for the first 20 minutes at home against Vietnam, because we knew they got quality, but so did we. So did we. We had enough players that could have taken care of them. And for the first 15 or 20 minutes, it felt like we were the away team, and that they were first to every second ball. They were in our faces. They were aggressive, and I don't think we responded from the sideline, any of us, or on the pitch to match that. And I think for me, it was sort of lost in that first 20 minutes there against Vietnam. They set the tempo and they kept it up. And, all credit to them. They were a team that knew what they wanted to do and how to do it. And they weren't going to be intimidated anywhere. In fact, it was the opposite. They put it on teams home and away. And I felt that it was a missed opportunity. The team had been to semi-finals of the Suzuki Cup before. It was a chance to go one further. And, it was never going to be easy, but I don't think we did anywhere as well as we could have done.
It's quite interesting you say that, Scott, because like we were talking earlier, we had we spoke with Daniel Bennett yesterday, and he was talking about some of his experiences with Singapore, and he was talking about teams that kind of grow into the tournament. And although we qualified out the group, I didn't think we probably played as well as we expected to play. We sort of played in fits and starts. We played some good football here and there in patches, but we never seemed to sort of get it together for a sort of full game. I looked at Vietnam, and they, especially like you said, that first 30 minutes in that semi-final, where really the onus and impetus should have been on us to really stamp our authority on the tie. It just wasn't there, and I think it was always going to be an uphill struggle going to their place in Hanoi. Without taking a lead, or at least giving a better account of ourselves in that first game. What I'm quite interested, while we're on the Suzuki Cup theme, is this year is obviously a Suzuki Cup year, and I was reading about. I think the Thai League might be starting late and might be going into the Suzuki Cup. So potentially some of their more established players might not be involved in that. But so the Suzuki Cup to the Philippine general public is a really, really big competition. But I'm thinking it's a great opportunity for us to pick up some silverware, because I know we've been to the semi-finals, 4 out of the last 5 years. And I know you've seen it as a real opportunity to pick up a trophy in the Southeast Asian setting. I mean, is that really a focal point now for the national team at this particular moment in time?
I think it has to be, Chris. I'm sure you would agree. And you're right. That first 30 minutes against Vietnam set the tone, and maybe we could be sitting here already with that Suzuki Cup had we got the first 30 minutes right. And when we went to Vietnam, it was always maybe a bridge too far, and unless it was your team was in 2010 that your team won in Vietnam. Was it 2010?
2010, yeah.
And I watched that game the other day, by the way, and headed goal off your shoulder, you tell me, and an assist. So we could have done with a performance like that there, couldn't we? But it's a chance to pick up silverware, whether Thailand are in or out. And of course, that could cause us problems too. But first of all, the Suzuki Cup is massive to Thailand. They deem themselves as number one in Southeast Asia, probably rightly so, although now I'm sure Vietnam will have something to say about that. It's a chance, but it's their chance too, and they do take priority in that tournament. So I'm surprised, and they're going to mirror their league's going to mirror the European League. And so that will pose a problem of players being released around the Suzuki Cup time. And of course, we know that Suzuki Cup, a lot of those games are outside of the FIFA calendar, so you can't call the players up. If the players, well, you can call them up, but the clubs don't have to release them. So that could be an issue. But it could be for us too, because we've got several players playing in Thailand also.
Right.
And funnily you said this, because the other day I was thinking, what if it fell outside the FIFA calendar, most of the games, and what would our team look like without any Thai representative players?
Right.
And it's still pretty good on paper, I can tell you. Yeah. And I'd still be very confident, and I still wouldn't make any excuse for that, to the point that we have to get to a final to go better. But if you're going to get to a final, you might as well win it, right? So we have to be looking at trying to win that tournament. There's no hiding from that, at all.
I think that for me speaks volumes of the mindset that's changed. Certainly when I started, and then going through the process with the national team, I definitely think there is more expectation, and obviously since you've come in, one of the things I think you've instilled is a stronger sense of belief that we could win something, we could achieve something. Like I said, and we've been to 4 semi-finals now, but of those semi-finals, I'm not too sure how many of those there was genuine belief that we could qualify for the final. But there is definitely that expectation now, because I think what you said, Thailand and Vietnam, they would probably see themselves at that point at the sort of the pinnacle of Southeast Asian football. They know that the Philippines are there and thereabouts for sure, and the expectation is definitely that we should be making finals. And I know that's definitely something that you've instilled in the squad, because that's just your personality and how you are. But one of the things I think that's interesting that you touched upon there was the fact that there are some players who perhaps are off the radar, perhaps outside of the pool of players who the general football public are familiar with. Is there any sort of updates with regards to some of those players? Is there anyone who's either acquired passport? I know we've been talking about naturalization before on this show, and the possibility of trying to get people like Bienve or Robert Lopez Mendy in the squad. What's the situation with regards to some players who perhaps are off the radar, who might potentially could be involved for Suzuki Cup later on this year?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Nothing with naturalisation at this point, but there is updates. Michael Kempter, after his long wait, has finally got permission, FIFA approved, and his passport. So that's another left-sided defender, or attacking left-sided player, if we want to use him that way.
Where's he playing right now, Scott? FC Zurich. He's
still at Zurich. Yeah. He's had a contract coming up, and he would like to move to Southeast Asia if it's right for him, but there's no guarantee on that.
Right.
Jesse Curran, who was formerly at Dundee United. He's about a week or two after lockdown from getting his passport, and it will be easier for him to be FIFA approved than Michael Kempter, who had previously played for Switzerland representative national team at junior level, which caused problems about sporting nationality. We had to wait for a FIFA decision on that. But Curran is another one. Nico De Vera has his passport now, and he's from Major League Soccer at the Portland Timbers, and he's free of his Achilles ankle, and he's looking good. Jeff Tabinas is a J2 player in Japan, centre back, father's Ghanaian, mother's Filipino, and he's got his passport and is clear and ready. Jesper Nyholm, which we all know about, is AEK Gothenburg centre back. Had a horrific broken leg about 2 years ago, and is just now back to 11v11 football and has expressed a desire to play. And we're also speaking to the one player that's been on the radar for a long time, but the most difficult to get is Jarrett Holtman. The FC Mainz player who's just gone out on loan somewhere else. Recorded as one of the top 3 fastest players in the Bundesliga. Again, his mother's Filipino. And just recently, I spoke to his agent actually during the lockdown a couple of times, and they think it's now that it's the right time. The last year or two's performances, and so there's another one, Rafael Obermeier, who was a Bayern Munich product, played for Bayern Munich too, then went to Sturm Graz in Austria. It's about a week away from his passport, and there's really hundreds more that come across. I actually remember Jesse Curran, Chris, it was you that identified him, sent his details to me, and that was about a year and a half ago. And so there's plenty more that we're looking at, but the biggest thing is with these players is, do they have actually desire to play? Do they want to play, and why? Is it to open up the Asian market for them financially, or is it because they really do want to play for the Philippines? And they're the big questions that we have to ask. And there's been a few players I've spoken to, and I don't feel that they've got the desire to come in and play. And so we're walking that line of current pool players that we're identifying, and then, as we touched on earlier, developing younger players, which will be probably a bigger challenge.
And how are you gauging that? Because I think that's really, really important, Scott. Like that desire to want to play for the national team. Because I think a lot of those players, those names were on lists for a long time, weren't they? I mean, I remember having conversations with you about if we can get this guy, if we can get that guy. But it must be really hard for you to try to decipher, right, what are the motivations for these guys wanting to play? Like, how do you do that? I'm quite intrigued from a coach's perspective. Like, how do you sort of try to gauge whether or not someone's in it for the right reasons or not?
I think it's got to be done over a period of time. And, fortunately with the passport process and FIFA, FIFA approval, you get time to speak to them often, and you can gauge that. I mean, if you look at Kempter and Curran, they've made the effort to come out here, even though they couldn't play. They've sat with the squad. They've been in the hotel rooms. Neom's, expressed desire on his own. They've come to me. And you just get a feel for it, I suppose, and rather than the one or two players that speak about, how much money will I be paid to represent the national team, what type of contracts could I get? They're all the red flags for me when people start talking about that. I want them to ask me, like Jarrett Holtman did, what's the system you play? How would you see me fitting into your style and your system? Nothing to do with anything else, with contracts, or what's the quality of the hotel like, or do I get business class flights, or things like that. Which, there are viable questions after you know that you want to play. And so it's gauged over a period of time, and I'd say we're about 3 or 4 to 1 of closing down a possible player based on them saying the wrong things and coming across the wrong way. And so we've got to get the attitude right, because it's taken time to build an environment in the Azkals that I'm comfortable with. There was one already existing when I came in, and Terry came in, and then it was me and you for a little bit, and then Sven came in, then it was back to me, and then there were some players have retired since then or got a little older, and new players have come in. So it's taken that time to get the environment right, and the last thing we want to do is destroy that environment. So we've got to make sure it's the right attitude coming in.
A lot of interesting names that were thrown out there. It seems to be like a lot of research for some of the casuals to get into, and to see what they have in store for the Azkals team. Obviously, you also mentioned that the team itself, there's a lot of quality at your disposal at the moment, and you kind of glazed over the Asian Cup a little bit as just basically as a disappointment outside of the first 80 minutes against South Korea. For the rest of us who were watching along from here in the Philippines, we were just extremely ecstatic about reaching a stage like that, and to be competing against the likes of South Korea and the like. You seem disappointed, and that strikes me as quite interesting. A lot of the players might have been just happy to be there. Was there anything else that you took from that outside of the disappointment? From that experience over there in where was it? Dubai,
UAE? Yeah, and Abu Dhabi, yeah. There's a lot to be taken on. Actually having that big tournament experience is one thing that we've got now. So we've had that. Maybe there was we're happy to be here. There was a lot of support out there from Filipino fans, which was immense. I mean, the China game was incredible, and I felt that. I'm disappointed because I felt like we didn't apply ourselves as well as we could. Even the South Korea game, for 80 minutes, the system we had, let's be honest, was to frustrate and counter, and it was working. And with 10 minutes left, we were 1-0 down. I'd rather lose 2 or 3 trying to get 1-1 than be happy with a 1-0 defeat. And I felt like we could have gone and asked more questions in the last 10 minutes, and we didn't do that. But we can take great pride in the way we equipped ourselves against a team that had recently beaten Germany in the world in the World Cup 2-0. So, we had some great performances, individual performances and collective performance in that first game, and I just felt from the last 10 minutes to the last 2 games it dropped off, and there was a little bit of uncertainty, and I think there was some parties frustrated, some not. I just felt like we'd not had enough time to really know what we really wanted to achieve as a group. And so for me in that situation, if and when, and it should be when we get back to the Asian Cup, we have to look at, targeting ourselves to get out of the group like Vietnam and Thailand did. And, if they can do it, why can't we? We showed here at home against Thailand in the Suzuki Cup, it was 1-1 and we had them on the rack. Vietnam, if we'd have applied ourselves a bit more, we could have, we could have done something there. Both those 2 teams got out of the Asian Cup groups. We played Oman and Bahrain. Neither of those 2 who'd already qualified for the Asian Cup. Neither of those 2 teams could beat us in away games from the Philippines. So we'd got the ability there. Everything was there for us to do something. We just didn't do it for whatever reason.
I think one of the other things, Scott, that we took from the tournament was really club personal. We realised we weren't that far away. And then kind of, I guess when you look at, like you said, the result, South Korea beating Germany, at a World Cup, you think you kind of hold them on a pedestal, don't you? You think, oh my gosh, this team's going to be, littered with world-class stars, and a lot of people would assume that we're just not going to be able to handle them. But we were capable. We were definitely capable, and I think we came out of that tournament with a sort of renewed confidence, as it were, to be able to go to that stage, whenever that might be, next time around, and feasibly compete. And by compete, we mean, get out the group, or make a run in the knockout stages. Which, if we'd have said that 4, 5, 6 years ago, you'd be like, what's he been smoking? It seems pie in the sky stuff. But yeah. I think that really needs to be. We can't be too cognizant of what happened in the past and hold on to those misgivings. We always have to look forward to the future. And I definitely think when you think about some of the caliber of players that we could potentially bring it into the mix. Add that to your philosophy, and hopefully a bit of time to embed that in. Within that time frame from the last Asian Cup, the qualification process, and hopefully at that time again, I don't see why we can't make a decent run at the Asian Cup level, which is really where we should be striving for now.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean, the bottom line is, with the players we're bringing in and the time we've got, and the quality we've already got, and some plans to develop players, it's simpler. There's no excuse. There just isn't any. There's no excuse. We should be trying to win the Suzuki Cup. We should be trying our best to get to the next round of World Cup qualification. We should be qualifying for the Asian Cup, and we should be trying our best to get out of the group there. And if we keep adding the quality and the time and developing ourselves, there's just simply no excuse for that. And so, I accept that as a coach, and I'll welcome that, and do whatever I can to try and go do better than we've done. You're right. We can take a lot of positives from the Asia Cup. We saw the South Korean game up close and personal, and there were chances in that game. And I remember Patino had a couple of chances there to level it up or to put us in front, that on any other given day he could have managed to do. 50-50 chances, but he could have taken. And I've seen him take, in my season I had him at Borneo, I saw him take 25, 26 similar chances like that. And so there's a lot we can take out of it, and there's a lot we can learn from too, in terms of our application and our belief. And I think that's where we can take so much from it in terms of what we can do and what we shouldn't do.
It's quite interesting, that you guys talk a lot about the belief that the team has now. It seems it has trickled over to the fans. There's a lot more expectation as to what we can go on and achieve as a team. And it was an interesting game quite recently, the World Cup qualifying match against Syria here in the Philippines, played in Panad. Obviously, the result did not go our way, but there was something about the approach to that game that was quite brazen, in that we went out there and we were going to attack them, and obviously that comes with a few risks, and perhaps they were able to score on us early, and it would have been easy to go over there and criticize the team that, hey, if we had taken a more cautious approach, perhaps that wouldn't have happened, and blah blah blah. But I remember you going out and speaking right after that match and not taking any excuses outside of your approach. In fact, you were happy that you went over there and took it to Syria, and that really hit me as, wow, we're going to go out there and we're not just going to try to survive against these teams. We're going to go out there and attack them. And even if the result didn't go our way, I thought, wow, there's going to be some exciting football to watch ahead for the Azkals.
Yeah, you're right. I'm still bitterly disappointed about that game. I'll tell you why. Because the first 20 minutes, we had Syria on the rack. We really did. We went 1-0 up. Every set piece, they were panicking. From a coach perspective, you can see in the technical area when a team's gone, and they were gone for 20 minutes. The centre backs were screaming at each other. They didn't know what they were. They didn't know how to deal with it. Every time we had a set piece, they panicked. And you only get a set piece right in attacking areas by attacking. So it shows we were in the right areas. And it's a shame we just couldn't sustain that. We conceded a goal on the break, and another one right after that, a penalty right after half time. Before you know it, we're 3-1 down, and the game's gone. The selection for that game was a gamble. Daisuke Sato played as a left centre back. He didn't have the height. Ian Ramsey was a left wing back, not really his natural position. So, but we went for it, and it was working for 20 minutes. And so we saw enough to be confident in that first 20 minutes, because Syria have probably got the most potent attacking force in Asian football. If you look at their front three, they're unbelievable players. And so, why sit back and let the best attacking force just attack you in a home game, on a wet night in Bacolod? So we took the gamble of going out. It didn't pay off, but we saw enough in the first 20 minutes that we can cause problems, and we did cause problems. And at that point, we'd only just started to get our atmosphere and the environment right and the rhythm right. And so I'll take that loss. Personally myself, it's 5 on paper. It's 5-2. It's a heavy loss. But what did we do after that loss? We gathered ourselves together. We dusted ourselves down. We took the positives from it, as Chris alluded to earlier. And then we went away to Guam and had the biggest away win in the last 5 years from any Azkals team. And the 4-1 in Guam could have and should have been 8 or 9-1, if I'm honest. And so we bounced back, and on that day in Guam, it just showed me this character is headed in exactly the right way. And so it was, the trip from Bacolod to Guam. That was the time where we were going to find out just what we were made of, because Guam was a team full of US-based players. It was a really poor surface, AstroTurf, a bouncy pitch. It was all set up for it to be a nightmare. And, they pulled it back to 2-1 with a penalty and against the run of play. And then, we stretched them out with Schrock, and Strauss scored third and fourth goals. And there was 7 or 8 really clear-cut chances. And so I was proud of that, because it was not so much a bounce back from a defeat. It was just more highlighting the character of the squad. And, to get the biggest away win, what I could see in the last 5 or 6 years was massive, having had that 5-2 loss at home.
Chris, you've been watching along and seeing how the Azkals have been playing. What do you think is something that we could add to the squad that we need the most? What is it that a piece of the puzzle perhaps that we could add into it that could have the biggest impact on the squad right now?
I think when Neil was talking, wasn't he, when he came on for his second episode? I think he just likes coming on the show, doesn't he, Neil? He was saying, actually, the squad's really good. The squad's really good. A lot of times it's just the case of taking a bit of time to, get used to the system, because it's like, as Scott was alluding to, it's a different approach, isn't it, to how we've been in the past? I mean, even if you look at on Suzuki Cup level, a lot of the games that we've had over the last probably 10 years, it is predominantly been, we're going to try to outmuscle an opponent. We'll be compact, we'll be physical, we'll probably hit them on the break, or use the quality that we have from set pieces, or maybe Phil Younghusband with a little bit of guile, a little bit of wizardry. He'll come up with something to unlock a defence. Whereas there is definitely a much more cohesive approach now, and as you said, it's a lot more aggressive and it's a lot more on the front foot. And that invariably is going to take time to embed. Even as Scott was alluding to, although people pick it up quickly, it does take time, because when you think about it, how many months have you had to work on it? But when you actually think about it in terms of training sessions, it's actually very few. If it was a real city, if it was a real football club, like a pre-season, you might be 2 weeks or 3 weeks into pre-season, if you want to look at it in that kind of sense. So I'm not sure if it's a case of, obviously, if you're going to be bringing in players of the caliber of a Nihom or a Kempter, people like that, and Tabinats, then they're obviously going to accentuate the squad, right? But in terms of what he's got in his disposal now, I think it's more just a case of, with the group of players that he's got at his disposal now, embedding those ideas, really nailing them down, and then obviously with every game that you're implementing those ideas, every game that you're getting more and more success, that just perpetuates that sense of belief. And probably the best example of that would have been that China game in recent in a recent World Cup qualifier. I would have said, if you'd have played China maybe 2 years ago, it would have been a back to the wall, like a 2 or 3-0 defeat would probably be acceptable, and we'd walk away from that being, well, that was acceptable. They're a highly ranked team. We can't really take too much away from an opponent like that. And all of a sudden, we get a 0-0 draw, put in a really solid performance, and even then, it was a bit like, we played well, but we probably could have beaten them. And I'm thinking, wow, that shows that just how far we've come in such a short period of time. The fact that we're going up against the might of China with all their billions at their disposal, the amount of money that they're pumping into their football program, and we're we're expecting to compete and feel a little bit disappointed when we get a really good 0-0 draw. I think that's a sign of how much it's progressed. I don't know what your take on it was, that particular game, Scott, but I thought the team played incredibly well. And for large portions of that game, I thought defensively we're very resolute. But even then, they had opportunities to potentially win that game, which is a completely different mindset to what we had, in previous years.
Yeah, Chris. Like you said, if you go back to results against China, just back for the last 2-3 years alone, it was an 8-1 loss away in China, then a 3-0 loss at the Asian Cup, and then we played them to a 2-0 loss under me in China, where I thought we actually played really well, in parts. And so we saw gradually ourselves improving. And then came the draw in Bacolod. And before the game, I met some of the regional FA presidents and just had a coffee with them about 3 hours before the game. And I remember we were 17-1 to win the game.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was 17-1 to win the game on some odds, and I told the regional staff, because I knew at the time we'd got a lot of things right. The confidence was running that this is we're going to get something from this game. I felt that we could. I felt that we would. The team did, and we went into there, and I felt like China had looked around at the stadium, the training facility, and I felt like they felt that maybe a little bit too good for the place. And they just got Elkson into the squad from who they'd naturalized, which I thought was ironic because 6 months earlier they were asking me in China, how do you feel about all your naturalized players? And I said to them, show me one naturalized player we've got. I mean, if you want to tell Stefan Schrock he's naturalised, you might have a little problem with him, and or any of you for that matter. And so we didn't have one. So they brought Elkson in, they brought the boy back from Espanyol, and they've got that front three up front, which was potent. But I felt like we'd got the plan right, and we knew what we were doing. We'd seen, if you remember, Chris, you and I went to watch China play against Bahrain after we'd drawn with Bahrain.
That's right. Yep.
And we identified that day what they were doing in terms of the captain dropping into the centre circle, picking up the ball from the feet, and 7 was a danger. And, the tactics weren't too much dissimilar from what we'd originally seen, because I kept seeing the same repeated action. We didn't use that in the Asian Cup, but we certainly did in Bacolod in the World Cup. And so we denied the captain the ball. We kept it compact and narrow at the back, but we made sure that there was an emphasis on scoring goals, not stopping them scoring.
Yeah.
And if you look in that game, there's about 8 or 9 chances and about 4 or 5 very good chances for us in that game. And towards the end, China took off their 2 centre backs and put 2 full backs on at the end to move the ball quicker, to try and push and get the win. And at that point there, James Younghusband wasn't in the squad. He was out of a club, and we got Angel Guirado in there with his height, lack of pace, but some height and some guile. And we went with him up front for the last 10 minutes. And I felt at that last 10 minutes, we're going to win this game now, because I felt that they were unbalanced defensively against us. And sure enough, Guirado had 2 very good chances that caused them a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And we had some set pieces at the end that still haunt me because we squandered them. We really squandered them. That there were chances there that they didn't have the aerial combativeness to stop us. And I felt Neil made a huge save on, I think it was 86 minutes.
Yeah.
But we had some chances there at the end. And so I felt like, people were saying to me, what's the best result we've had in X amount of years, and no one's took points from China in 62 years in World Cup, and all these stats that didn't. I didn't care one bit about them. I cared that, you know what, this could have and should have been a win. So I had to be careful how I gauged that in the changing room after the game, because I'm actually a bit ticked off, because I'm thinking, you know, they were there, you know, tongue hanging out, you know, jaw dropped, ready to be put out, you know, and we missed a chance, and I don't think we'll do that again. I think we have a team in that position in the future. We've got enough about the squad now, the mentality and environment to put a team away like that, and we got it right. And if you look at Lippi's comments after the game, you know, when he resigned in Syria after the 2-1 loss in Syria, he said, you know, we can play well against teams like Maldives and Guam, but we struggle against stronger teams, again, like Syria and Philippines. So there's the World Cup winning coach saying something like that about us, which I don't think we would have got anything like that, you know, going back 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, I remember those comments when I think we even commented, didn't we, Jing, when we did the show after that match, and it was like, it's almost surreal, you know, like
bizarre,
when you kind of think about it in that context. But knowing Scott, that doesn't surprise me in terms of the comments. You know, like there is that sort of bullish nature, you know, that winning mentality that obviously he has and wants to instill that in the squad. And, you know, part of me thinks that it's a shame that the China game wasn't able to be concluded in that sort of quick, it's quite a quick turnaround between that game and when the game was scheduled to be played in this past window. Because obviously it gives them a little bit of a stay of execution, so to speak. I mean, I'm hoping it can be revisited at a later stage, but it would have been nice to have sort of kept that momentum going, because I definitely think that, you know, that was a great opportunity to, like you said, to sort of cut the throat while you know, your foot's on the neck, so to speak. Is there any news with regards to that? When is that potentially going to be rescheduled? Is there any updates regarding any World Cup qualification games when they might be played?
No, there's not been any news at all. We're waiting from AFC, and they're just monitoring just the domestic leagues for now, and I guess they're going to take it from there. I guess the problem with international competition is the travel and the domestic side looking after themselves, and so you're always going to run that. So we've not heard anything yet at all. Okay. But I read an article the other week that the Chinese national team are away in camp training already.
Oh, so really? Yeah.
That's interesting. And they've since then they've naturalized 3 more Brazilian players. So I think that's interesting from a naturalization part, especially a country that put it on me in their own press conference about our so-called naturalized players, which we have none of. So it'll be interesting to see how that helps their team or affects their team, because that's the key, isn't it? And it's, you know, it's no different from us. We bring in Kempter or Curran or Tabernas or Holtman and Neholm. They've still got to make the squad. They've still got to show they deserve to be there from an attitude, and that they can improve the squad and hopefully improve the team. They have to show that. They're not just going to be, you know, dumped into the lineup. I need to be able to understand that that's going to improve us, because we don't want to move sideways. And we've got a squad of players here who are loyal, who work hard, that roll the sleeves up, that fight, that have endured some things that some other players wouldn't endure. And so we have to be careful that we don't start, you know, giving shirts away any old how. And so, and I'm making that clear to these players. And I think they respect that the fact is that they're going to have to earn the spot in the squad. They're going to have to make sure they stay in the squad, and then can they improve the starting 11? Now, on paper, of course, they should be able to, but, you know, teams don't play on paper, do they? So we have to make sure that it fits that way. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how we can develop this without losing focus of where we've come from and who's brought us here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I want to try to segue into the Azkals development squad now, because I think that's quite a nice bridge with some of the players that perhaps are people like myself, field foreigners, with the term I don't like, but field foreigners who might not be quite ready to make that step up into the national team, whether it be for age, whether it be for just experience. But it seems as though that type of environment is very conducive for players who are, maybe they're from America, they're postgraduate. They might be just still in a youth team or a reserve, development squad of a professional club in Europe, for example. That seems to be quite a nice opportunity there for people to make that segue from, being not quite ready for senior national team football, but have an opportunity to play with and under the national team sort of setup. Was that the kind of premise behind the Azkals development team being set up?
Well, yeah, because there's some academies out here, and there's the Kaya one, there's some academies, but there's not a dearth of academies here, and so you're looking at where are the next players going to come from. We don't want to always be looking to Europe and to all the time, or to US college soccer as well. And so it was a notion of, can we put a program together that we can give players an opportunity to develop, and so we can see how they can develop, whether they be from a youth team set up in Europe, or a college grad from the US, or within our own college system here in the Philippines, or high school even, and so that we can start taking a look at players. And I guess that's one of the things I've enjoyed most in my career is finding players, finding talent, and it's something I've enjoyed doing. I've done it quite well in Thailand. Over 8 or 9 players developed from nothing to national team players. And so if you look at the population here, you look at like the culture of Filipinos and some of the college systems as well here, high school players. I felt like there was surely enough possibilities there for us to put a team into the league, develop that team, and see if we can help them move on in their careers. Some of them may make the step up to bigger clubs elsewhere, whether it's domestic clubs here in the Philippines or abroad, and potentially then coming into the Azkals. And so if we were looking for players to help the Azkals senior team from the top, why not go the other way as well, look, see what we can get from the bottom? And I felt that was what we were missing. And if you look at some of the other examples of under 23 teams playing in domestic leagues, there's that we could follow. And I think we've made a good start with that, there is a pretty good college system here. And it's a bit US style, and there are some good players, some good coaches, and we've got some exciting players. And two of the the players that are exciting me the most right now have come through from the domestic level. There's a young boy called Lance Ocampo that I think I saw him in one training session. He was still at high school. He came in and he just showed wonderful balance and technique, and it was Darren Hartman who recommended him with a few other players. And so we're always taking recommendations. It's not exclusive. We're looking at everyone, and with the population here, we want to keep looking. So this kid came in, and he's in great strides. Harvey Gayosa is another one who's, we've tweaked his position a little bit, which surprised a few people in the City Games. But again, he's making strides too. And there's a couple of European-based players, 1 or 2 American kids that have come in. So it's exciting, and there's some potential there. Will any of them make the senior Azkals? We'll wait to see. But if you look at in the Sea Games, Diano and Gayoso, good performances, and it's nice to be able to see that we're not just searching football club abroad to find players that have got a Filipino father or mother or grandparent that we can see if they really want to play for us. That there's got to be a way that we can identify players. The population's so large here, and I'm pretty sure we'll, given time, we'll be able to create some senior Azkals through these programs.
It's something we talk about a lot, isn't it, Jing? We talked about it a lot on the show, about having the opportunity for especially homegrown Filipinos to try to bridge that gap, because I think it serves 2 purposes. One, the one which you mentioned there, about giving that pathway for local domestic players to sort of bridge that gap between, like you said, the college system and then maybe the professional game, which ultimately playing in the PFL is what it's there to do. But I think it also serves the purpose of leveling the playing field as well, for a local Filipino player, because we've talked about this on many occasions, Jing, haven't we? About the fact that it is an unfair advantage for someone like myself who grows up in the UK, getting great coaches, playing in great teams under the tutelage of some wonderful managers. Of course, it's going to be an uneven playing field. It's going to be so hard for someone like Jovan Bedic, for example, to come through from Iloilo playing on crummy fields, not getting the consistency of quality games, and then expect them at 21, 22 to step up into the professional game. I know, Jing, you've got your thoughts on that as well, haven't you? Because it's something that you've talked about a lot on the show.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually, when you speak to a lot of the homegrown players who are playing in the pro leagues, there's a sense of disheartenment in the fact that, there seems to be no hope in being able to break into the national team. And there are very few personalities that they can look at as an example that is breaking in and making an impact, So when you look at something like the Azkals development team and you see how some of these homegrown players are able to perform on a stage like the Southeast Asian Games, then individuals who are younger than them will get an opportunity to be like, hey, man, I can go out there and play. But at the same time, it's also a realization that somebody like Harvey Gayosa, for example, who is a standout, absolute superstar at the college level, is being forced to play in a position that is perhaps a little unconventional for him because this is his best use as being part of that squad. So, it's not enough to just be a good standout player in your college team. If you want to make it into the national stage, there's got to be a higher bar that you aspire to. So I think it achieves both of those things. It allows for a path into the national team, but at the same time, it gives you a taste of what you need in order to make it. And if there's anything to take from what you were talking about earlier, it's like, man, it's not enough that you're, a Phil Foreigner, sorry for the term, that you're going to be making it into the squad if you have high credentials. You also have to have the right personality. You also have to have the right character, a willingness to play in that system. So the bar is getting higher and higher. And if you're a homegrown player or a star or standout, man, there's a lot of catching up to do. So my question to you, Scott, is like, what do you think are the parameters that need to be put in place for homegrown stars or for players to start making up that ground? Because I'm sure there's a lot of them that are going to be wanting to break through and make an impact on the national stage.
I mean, of course, the first message is they should not give up and they should not be dismayed. But we have to be honest, and that the ADT system is the first system to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, but there's only one ADT, and so it would be nice to see the PFL grow, for the teams to have academies, for us to be able to put an academy league together, for that to start happening, And we look at the national team now. There's Dato, Aguinaldo, and Bedic are the current three really that are homegrown, and you can see that potentially if we can get the ADT right, and it's a benchmark for other. I mean, ADT doesn't have to be exclusive. It's just an idea that we can hopefully roll out across the country with other areas and other teams to keep doing this. But if we get it right, players like Gayoso and Diano, they excelled during the SEA Games, and the SEA Games was quite, those players did well in the SEA Games. You look at the victory over Malaysia, the Cambodia late draw, the 7-8 Leicester. They did well, and one stark difference during that SEA Games struck me is I was at a dinner with the team, and the Thai national team walked in, and about 9 or 10 of the players came over to say hello to me, and it struck me as I said hello to them, asked them how they were doing, that all 9 of those players were playing in Thai in T1, in the Thailand Professional League, and have been playing for 2 or 3 years. Then I looked at our table, and you just saw Schrock, Aguinaldo, a little bit of Justin Bass, who was in Holland. Rontini played a little bit in Italian Division 4, and then the rest were, college players. So, and if you look how they equip themselves, those players, there were some really good signs there. So it shows that there are some good programs here, because those players didn't equip themselves on the back of 1 or 2 months training with Azkals staff. They had to have some background. So something was working, because Gayoso, Diano, and other players like Suba, and players like that were equipping themselves well during that stage. So if we can give them more experience and exposure to higher levels of perhaps training and competition, then surely we're going to get those players coming through. the ADT program is not going to be enough. That's just going to have 20 places, 25 places maximum each year. And that's not going to be enough for a nation as big as we are. And so we have to find a program that we can develop, identify players and develop them, regionally. And the only way that's going to happen is if there are either regional teams that are organized a little bit in the US Olympic Development Program style, or that the PFL grows and they assume academy teams as well. And so, you look at academies out there now, there's some private academies and there are some good ones. And, some of the players that have been sent to us, like Lance Ocampo came in, I think he's got a huge talent and a great future. But, tactically is behind what players would be, like Chris has just said about players that have grown up in European clubs with other players and coaches and systems. And so it's got to be addressed. But I do think we made the right start and decision with ADT, and we will get the benefits of that. Some of those players will possibly move on from ADT to PFL clubs or to Thai clubs or to Korean clubs or other clubs and get themselves exposed. And ideally, as the national team coach, that's what I want to see. I want to see those players so we can, bring them into the national fold too. And so there's a production line coming. But the production line right now is just like, it's almost like a single file line, and we need to have multiple lines, which is got to be a overall youth development strategy, I guess.
Yeah, something that we talk about a lot, isn't it, Jing? About having that youth development structure as a whole. It's quite interesting that Scott was talking about having it on a more regional level, because that's something, again, I've touched on that many, many times, more on the youth segment side, because I think that exactly what you said, it has to be some sort of funnel to the top. Do you know what I mean? It can't be, you had a great visual of the single file. You should be cramming players, you should all be cramming them in, they all should be clambering to try and get an opportunity to play. And the only way you're going to do that is by broadening the base to begin with, right? So by engaging with those regional FAs or regional organizations to try to put up their own, exactly what you said, like their own version of an ODP, Olympic Development Program, because then what you'll get is you'll get the best kids from the south, the best kids from Visayas, the best kids from Luzon, all converging, and you'll have that competitive nature already. And if you're in the best batch from those particular regions, you're all going to want to compete against each other, and that's when you're going to get better players coming through, at least initially, to the collegiate system, right? Because then the collegiate coach is going to cherry pick all the best ones from those types of settings, and then by that time, they get to you. Then you should have more players of that caliber, which is really what we're after. It's not exactly what you said. It's not enough that you can, because correct me if I'm wrong, the composition of your group right now is, what would you say is the makeup like of guys raised abroad who've come into the setup versus guys who are coming in from the collegiate setup? What's the ratio?
It's about 60-40 in favour of domestic collegiate players.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, I mean, really, in an ideal scenario, that would be something like 80-20, wouldn't it? Something like that would be perfect. Absolutely. Because you still need to have, there needs to be that, looking at, for example, Bailey's in that mix, isn't he, at the moment? And he's someone who probably needs to be in that. He'd always probably be one of the more senior figures in that group, I'd imagine. He's got decent experience. He's probably on the young side for the national team. Has potential to probably break into that, no question. But he'd benefit from probably playing a year, under your tutelage, under the system that you want to, and so he can make that transition a little more seamlessly, and then also be that kind of mentor figure for someone, a young upstart coming through the system. But you've got to have more people coming through, and this is something that we really, really talk about a lot on the show, because obviously it's my MO at the moment is to try to produce more homegrown players for people like you to select. So. Yeah, it's nice to see that there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, though, Jing, isn't there, for guys who we're trying to develop, to cultivate, to at least give them a viable option into the professional game. Because I think that's something that's been lacking, hasn't it, Jing, in the country? I
think that's why it's such a disappointment that this whole virus situation has transpired, because the start of the league was about to start. We were just about to get upon the opening of the PFL, and for a lot of the casual fans, the large driving point of that was to see what the Azkals development team was going to look like and how they were going to perform against the likes of Ceres, Kaya, and Stallion, in fact, is a great benchmark for people to see just how good this team is, And I'm sure, Scott, that there were a few targets that were set prior to the start of the season. And what were you guys looking at? How well did you guys see yourselves performing in this season of the PFL?
Yeah, good question. We actually had no targets for the league at all. Not one target for where we want to come or position or cups or anything like that. It was just about developing them in because it's difficult, right? Because we're not a team. We're a team of players. We're trying to develop as a and so we're trying. Sometimes we might make the right decision for the player, but the wrong decision for the team. And so we're trying to improve the players so that they can ultimately move on. At the same time, you're always trying to embed into them a winning mentality. So it's a fine line of both things. And so we were always saying we were going to work as hard as we can, develop everybody as best as we can, and they had to accept everything we were going to do. Like Gay also had to accept. That's where I see him, excelling as a professional. And he accepted it. And I can tell you, behind the scenes, that boy's worked so hard and he's come on so much. And he's already looking to me that he would be ready to go to T2, that level of league football at some point, maybe higher than that. And so there was no target. Of course, you want to win. I always want to win. But we will be looking at doing what's best for each player, and that at time might be at the cost of the team. And so we couldn't really put a target in like that because it wouldn't sync with what we're trying to do for each player. And like I said, at the same time, we're just trying to teach them how to want to and how to get wins, as a professional. So maybe times mid-season that a PFL team or a Thai team or a Korean team or a European team says, hey, we like X player, can we take them? And at that point there, we're going to do what's best for the player. It won't be about them. We're second in the league and we're in a position to challenge. That player's got an opportunity that we feel's right for him. Then he's going to go, and we're going to bring in the next player and so forth and so forth. So that's the idea.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So
I think it's quite refreshing, isn't it, Jing, to have Scott look at it from that perspective, because I think a lot of people in that position might see this as an opportunity to try to bolster your profile or whatever, or try to see it as a stepping stone to something else, that type of role. Whereas I think it is really important that it's got to be process driven, because the long-term aim really is you're going to be judged on how many players that you are able to put forward to the national team, or how many players you produce for the league, or how many players you get to play abroad. And if that means, you lose half your squad midway through the season because you've got, clubs from Southeast Asia wanting to sign them, and you finish bottom of the league because you don't win any games for them, that's actually a successful year. You know what I mean? That can't be deemed to be a negative. So I think that's quite refreshing to hear that, because I think in some circumstances people might, as a coach, sometimes people put their ego in front of the development side when you're in that type of role. We all want to try to win at all costs, but I think it's refreshing to hear that. And I know it probably goes against his better judgment, because I know he wants to win all the time, but it's nice that, again, Harvey came on the show, didn't he? And he spoke, glowingly about having to have the opportunity to learn something new, to do something different, to add another string to his bow. That's the exact phrase that he used. And, if you've got 11 players, 10 other players like that on the roster who are willing to do that, then it's only going to enhance the national team down the road, because those kids are going to learn, they're going to develop, they're going to accentuate their game under that kind of tutelage, and hopefully go on to progress and have really, really good football careers, which ultimately is what everyone wants, isn't it?
One thing perhaps that has been a bit of a trend in Philippine football, unfortunately, has been a lot of change. It's been difficult for fans to get around a lot of continuity, whether it's in the league or the national team, in terms of who's in charge and what to expect, the composition of the team. But it seems as if over the last year or so that we are starting to see not only a bit of continuity, but foundations being laid down for a bigger sort of perspective, a bigger plan down the road. So, I mean, we're over an hour here. Of course, we want to be very respectful of your time, Scott. But, how do you foresee things going down the road? And is the Philippines going to be central to your future for the coming years?
Well, yes, it is, because I mean, there's a lot of things I still need to achieve and move on. And at the same time, a coach now at any club or national team has got a lifespan. It's not going to last forever. But you like to think you can put the groundwork in and get them to a place where it can be the work can be continued. And so, for me, the foreseeable future is, of course, it's here. And as a national team coach, you need 4, 5, 6 years to be really judged on your work. In any case, because what Chris said, if this was a club team, we'd be 2 or 3 weeks into pre-season. That's not enough time to get your systems into place or your environment in. But we are there. We've got a nice, strong environment. We've got a nice culture. There's a system of play that the players know they know how to adapt it. They've got a good idea of set pieces. They know a good idea what I don't like on and off the field, and then and there's an environment to that, and the ADT plays in a similar way, and so we're building something. I feel that we're in a good position. We're in a good position in the World Cup group. The last game against Syria was unfortunate loss, but actually we played really well in the second half. And there's much more for us to do. We've got to try and win a Suzuki Cup. We've got to get back to the Asian Cup and get through the group. We've got to try to move on to the second phase of World Cup qualification. So, if we don't get to those milestones, if we don't get to those targets, then maybe it's a time that the association wants to take a look at, the federation wants to take a look at me and say, is he right? But as it seems right now, I think we've got a good understanding, players, staff, and fans. And media too, for that matter. And so I feel like we're going in the right direction, and long may it continue. And so for me, it's just about delivering. It comes down to that, just delivering younger players developed into the national team, identifying players that really want to play for us, keeping the squad moving forward, and keeping our eyes on everything. And so, long-term future for me is here. At the same time, I'm not naive. I know there's a lifespan on all coaches. But I'd like to, by the time my days come to an end here, I would like to look back upon as the best tenure that there's been. Because if that's the case, Philippine football is in the best position it ever will be to this point.
It's well said. Yeah. It definitely feels like, there's something brewing. There's something to be excited about. We're reaching new heights. And the beautiful thing that I see personally is that it's not enough. It's not enough for you, and it's not enough for the players. And they're seeing that there's so much more that lies in store. And, as a person who is involved in the football community and is a fan of the national team and how things are transpiring, it brings nothing but excitement. To challenge what is capable within the realm of Philippine football, which not too long ago was just trying not to get whooped was the goal, and now we're trying to reach into the Asian Cup and trying to be one of the best in Asia. So thank you for the time. I appreciate you having the moment to speak with us here and to give us such access to your mindset and what you feel is in store for the game.
Yeah, I mean, like Chris said earlier, I'm not really one for interviews, and he knows that. I mean, Chris knows me personally really well. He's a humble guy. He's been around me. He's helped me a lot. He's done a lot of work with me, and a lot of things we've built has been on the back of his work too. So he knows I'm not a guy that appears on the media or tries to do too much or want to do too much. But I feel it's important that to reach out and explain myself at times, and this with people that have obviously got football at heart here in the Philippines. It's the best way to do it. So I appreciate you for having me on the show. And, honestly, anytime.
No, I really appreciate that, Scott. It's always nice to get your perspective on things. Like as someone who worked with you, it was always nice for me to hear how you would foresee your plans taking shape and how things would develop. And I really wanted to get you on the show because I wanted everyone else to be privy to that kind of insight, because it's when you sit at dinner or you have a conversation over breakfast, these are conversations that only you and I would have. And sometimes I would often, be sat there thinking, I wish everyone knew this about your mindset or how you were trying to implement certain things, because I think it then gives the general football public a little bit more of an understanding of how you like to operate and your thoughts and your plans. So no, I think you were really, really insightful, and I'm pleased that you got a lot of your messages across that you would try to relay to me as a coach or relay to the players, and hopefully the general football fan who watches this or listens to this will take note, because there's a lot of really positive things that you're looking to implement, a lot more exciting plans that are hopefully going to be able to come to fruition in the upcoming months and years. And I think it's a really exciting time for Philippine football, so hopefully you can continue your good work and keep that momentum going.
Cheers, Chris. Thank you, mate. Cheers.
That's it. Thanks a lot, Scott. If you enjoyed this interview, please do subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Look for us on social media so you are always in the loop on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. That's it, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Football Friday.